Greetings from Costa Rica and welcome to this Friday's broadcast. I'm very excited to be joined once again by Alex McGowin. He is an expat tax expert. Wow, I can't believe I just hit that phrase on my first try. If you want to learn more about Alex's business, you can visit McGowinTax.com. And today we're going to be going over some of the real basic questions in dealing with Costa Rica real estate and the IRS, everybody's favorite United States institution. We're going to ask some very simple questions involving the basic reporting requirements when you purchase a property, when you open a bank account. We're going to ask Alex whether it makes any sense for people to put a Costa Rica property in the name of their U.S. corporation. We'll talk about reporting rental income to the IRS. And finally, we'll talk about the treatment of IRS taxpayers, aka U.S. human beings or anyone who's ever gone through the country who live in properties held by their own Costa Rica corporation. Alex, thanks so much for joining me again. I greatly appreciate it. How are you doing today up in the U.S.?
Yeah, doing great. It's very cold here at the moment. We had historic snows and just being cold on the Gulf Coast up here. But we're supposed to thaw out come Monday. But
okay,
still
you're
cold.
on the Gulf Coast and you have historic cold, freezing temperatures. I have been paying very little attention to the news. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. I'm in Mobile, Alabama, but it snowed a couple times in my life here, and we got 7 inches. And like Destin, Florida, Pensacola are very close to me, and there was snow on the beach. Like I didn't go, but the video was like watching the waves hit the snow on the beach. It's a crazy like dichotomy of things. But yeah,
surreal.
Yeah,
holy cow.
Yeah.
Well, thanks very much for lining up the need for me, Alex. Folks, if you're out there and also suffering from historic cold temperatures and you're considering a move to warmer climes, do be sure to visit CostaRicaMatt.com where you can subscribe. I'm going to cover my face here to my VBook. You can click on the blue VBook icon at CostaRicaMatt.com. I've got a 20-chapter VBook about acquiring property here, all of the basics, a lot of helpful topics. We can get you into the warmer weather should you so desire. Without further ado, let's start hitting up Alex for some information about the basics of Costa Rica real estate and the IRS. All right, Alex, let's say I've just purchased a Costa Rica property. What are my basic reporting requirements? What do I have to file with good old Uncle Sam immediately following my purchase?
Yeah, as always, it's going to depend. The truth is, if you purchase a property directly in Costa Rica and you have no bank account and you just own this property directly, there's no reporting requirement to the IRS. It's treated just like you own any other asset, like if you purchased an asset or a real estate in the U.S. Now, if that property starts earning money, has rental income and things like that, that goes on your U.S. return, and we'll talk more about the rental a little bit later. But in a perfect world, what I say, it generally makes sense to own these properties in a Costa Rican company. And so the way I generally try to get my clients to set it up is have an SRL or limitada in Costa Rica, Costa Ricans LLC. We make an election to treat it as a flow through, as if in the U.S. it doesn't exist, has no impact on the Costa Rican legal side of it. It's purely a U.S. tax election. And with that, we do is it's a 2-step process. We have to get an EIN number for the Costa Rican corporation in the U.S. And then we file a form 8832 to tell the IRS, hey, this is no longer a foreign corporation. It's a partnership or disregarded entity. And that's how we're going to file it going forward. And then if it's not a rental property, you're done. There's no more reporting to the IRS. It's a one-time deal.
Absolutely. So we did cover that in more detail, that proactive election you should make in the previous video that Alex and I put together. The link to that video will be at the end of this one, where you can just tap or click on it, no problem to go there. Interesting. So if you own it in your own name, you don't have to really report anything right then. Yes, if you have a corporation, you're filing our good old friend Form 8832.
Right.
Now let's talk about what do you need to do if you've just opened a Costa Rica bank account.
Yeah, so if you opening a bank account, the IRS implemented something called FATCA back in 2013. And essentially what that was a blackmailing of all foreign banks across the world to say, hey, we're the U.S. and we want to know about all of our U.S. citizens that have bank accounts in all foreign countries. And so that's done a couple of things. It's made it a little harder to get a bank account, although I don't see that in Costa Rica as much. In other countries it is. But once you have the bank account set up, the IRS wants to know about it. The foreign bank technically has to tell the IRS about it. But the rule is if you have more than $10,000 in aggregate in foreign or Costa Rican bank accounts, you have to report that to the IRS annually on what's called an FBAR. It's filed separately from your tax return. It's a stupid little form that really is very simple to fill out. I can show people how to fill it out themselves. But the penalty is $10,000 per year if you forget this little form about your bank account. So at least talk to somebody about whether it's required or not, and then you can look up how to do it yourself to save some fees. But yeah, it's important. So that's really the thing with the bank accounts is that FBAR.
Okay, FBAR is the correct label for that form.
Right. I talk a lot in lingo sometimes, but yeah, the FBAR.
I'm sure. I can't imagine the amount of lingo that bounces around your head that other human beings don't know.
Right.
And it's so funny that form is just so close to FBAR from all those, World War II movies.
Right.
Did someone watch that and then say we should use this? Because FATCA was probably implemented. Let's see, what year did that come in? That was in 2010. Let me look what year Saving Private Ryan came out. Saving Private Ryan.
Oh, it was before
2014.
Saving Private Ryan? No.
Yeah. Well, no, it's a 1998 movie, so it's entirely possible. It's entirely possible 12 years that Saving Private Ryan predated the FBAR form.
Yeah,
Anyhow,
we're gonna have to ask them about that. I'm pretty sure though it's because it stands for Foreign Bank Account Report, but you could be right. It could be Saving Private Ryan.
somebody could have just been making a joke about the entire tax system,
Right. That's funny.
Here's a basic question I get a lot. People ask me all the time, should I put my Costa Rica property in the name of a Costa Rica corporation? Now, on the U.S. side, does it make any sense whatsoever for taxpayers to put their Costa Rica property in their U.S. LLC rather than directly owning it or the shares of their corporation themselves?
I mean, the short answer to me is very rarely or no. I mean, maybe if you have a bunch of real estate that you own and this is a big operation and the Costa Rican property is one piece of this big puzzle. And so maybe in that case, it could make sense to have it underneath your already existing U.S. structure. But otherwise, it's just going to complicate things. And the point of the U.S. company at the end of the day is liability protection. And U.S. company doesn't really do that in a foreign jurisdiction. That's what that's what the SRL in Costa Rica does. So there's not really a point. A trust I can possibly see just because there can be estate planning options trust because that Costa Rican property is going to be, if you're a U.S. citizen, it's going to be in your estate if you passed away, regardless of where it is. So a trust could be an option to move it out of your estate. But otherwise, U.S. company, no, you're just complicating things for no particular benefit.
Thank you so much for saying that. I appreciate it. Now let's imagine person has generated some rental income, paid all of their expenses, and they've got cash left over at the end of the year. what happens? Let's say they bring that back to their U.S. bank account even now, and they've really cashed out their profit. Where are they reporting that to the IRS on their annual tax return?
Right. So if you followed my advice and you made the election to treat it as a flow-through entity on the front end, then what's happening is you're treated as owning that property directly from a U.S. tax perspective. So it's treated no differently than if you owned a real estate property in the U.S. You're reporting the net income of that business on your U.S. tax return, so on a Schedule E, and you pay taxes on it if you have net income, or you can use the loss potentially if you don't. There's things you can do about those losses, but yeah, it flows directly to your tax return. And as far as like bringing the cash itself is irrelevant from a U.S. tax perspective, because you're picking up the income regardless of whether you bring the money back or not.
Yeah.
So distribution of cash, like moving cash, I get that question a lot. Moving cash from your Costa Rican bank account to the U.S. It really has no impact on U.S. taxes. The caveat to that is if that cash is a foreign corporation and you're moving it to yourself, that's similar to like a dividend, or that would be some kind of income to you. But in a flow-through scenario, we don't care about cash movements.
Okay. It's just you're reporting it with other real estate rental income on Schedule E, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. And they do put in this goofy international form that you have to file. There's a form 8858 that you file if you're the sole owner of the SRL. And then that makes SRL a disregarded entity. And then if say you and your spouse own the SRL together, then you have a foreign partnership, and it's a form 8865. So it's reported a little bit differently on your U.S. tax return. It's the same end result, but it's whether it's a partnership or a disregarded entity. Same concept as if you set up an LLC in the U.S. If you own it with your spouse or somebody else, it's a partnership. If it's just you, it's a disregarded entity, like you own it directly.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Now, once again, you've already provided, the insight, the information. I'm very grateful to you as a U.S. CPA with how many years experience? Over a decade?
Yeah. I started with Price Waterhouse in 2012 in their expat tax group. So I've been really drilling down on this expat thing for a long time, and
absolutely. And that's absolutely something I should have brought up long ago at the beginning of the video. But anyhow, let's continue with our last question here. You brought up we were sort of chatting about some of the most important issues that people should really be aware of as they get involved in foreign properties. Lots of folks are going to buy the property in their corporation's name, and then they're going to live in it themselves. Mm-hmm. How does the IRS treat people who are doing that, and what advice do you have for those people?
Yeah, and I'll be honest, this is something that's come up more recently for me, and something I wasn't thinking a lot about before, but because the flow-through election I talk about, it's extremely important in the rental concept, because there's business activity going on, and it complicates things keeping it a foreign corporation. But I used to not worry about that so much if you were going to live in the property. But it's actually a bigger deal for two reasons. Because one, you have to think this corporation from the IRS's perspective is a separate person. It's a separate taxpayer. Just like if you own a corporation in a U.S. C corporation or an Inc., it's a separate thing. So that corporation owns the property. And if you go live in it, then you technically owe that corporation rent for them allowing you to stay in the property. It's a weird thing to think about because you own the property, but you have to think about the corporation as like, if that was some other person, they're not going to let you stay there for free. You'd have to pay them rent. And so that's how the IRS looks at it. It's technically, if it's a foreign corporation and you're living in it, there technically needs to be some transaction there showing rental income to the corporation, which can be a strategic thing from a tax perspective, but most of the time it's just complicated. And,
Yeah.
yeah. So again, back to the flow through election. I don't know how many times I can drill that into people, but
It
it's
seems fundamentally important.
yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
It just closes so many potential problems in
Yeah.
the future that you don't see on day one. But then when you
Yeah.
call me and saying you're selling your property, what's going to be the impact? It could be bad news.
Totally.
That's
Well,
avoidable.
now, Alex, I should have asked you this before we went live in a video. You're going to be in Costa Rica in the somewhat upcoming future. Would you potentially be available to people who are already here in Guanacaste who need to meet with you and sort out tax issues?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's generally the purpose of my trip down there. I do come.
Oh, great.
I come to actually stay in Brasilito generally, or
Okay.
that area. I'm going to try and
Yeah.
move around a little bit this time because I usually go to the same spot just because I love that area. But
Yeah.
I'm going to travel around a little bit and meet with some clients there. But yeah, definitely. I mean, reach out to me, and if we can make the time work, I'd love to meet with some people in person. Maybe meet you in person. We've never actually seen,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
yeah.
And is the best direct email address for you alex@mcgowintax.com?
I actually made it more complicated for some reason, and I said it's alex.mcgowan at
At
mcgowintax.com. There's a
okay.
lot of McGowan going on, I know, but yeah,
alex.mcgowan@mcgowintax.com.
right. And you can also reach me just through the comment in my website. That comes
Of
straight to me
course.
as well.
Yeah. There is his email address now on the screen. We can also, I bet if you hook up with the right IT person, Alex, they could get you an email address that's easier for people to use.
I've been thinking about it, just it never quite makes the priority
I
list.
know. I'm in the same shoes though. If I didn't have other people helping me with that stuff, I would still be using like rosieman13 at AOL.com
Right.
as my email address
Yeah.
nowadays.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
anyhow, Alex, it's been a sincere pleasure having you to discuss these basic expat tax issues. Folks, again, if you want to get in touch with me, you can email me at matt@costaricamat.com. I'll get Alex's address off the screen here so we can show that. Thanks very much for joining us, folks. We will look forward to seeing you next Friday. We're getting my colleague Camille on for our live broadcast next Friday to discuss rental income. Have a great weekend. Pura vida, and thanks again to Alex.